Hello, today we're going to be talking about CD Projekt Red and Witcher. And let's start with the PC Gamer article, which starts with I do not know how to pronounce the name of the author of the books, but he says these days it's so rare for CD Projekt Red to ask him about Witcher lore. Recently wrote a prequel to his Witcher novels, Crossroads of Ravens. At an event to publicize that novel, our colleagues at GamesRadar asked the author if he'd been involved in any part of the development of The Witcher 4, and he said basically nope. And there is an issue with that. Time and time again we see people take work that already has a canon base and then they change stuff in it and it becomes worse. I'm saying, for example, in this case, Ciri being a Witcher, which honestly doesn't make any goddamn sense, and they could have just left her as is and explored her magical side to what Geralt didn't really have, since he was more focused on the Silver Blade and so on. But instead they're just gonna make her a Witcher, which can't happen if anyone knows the lore. Females can't become witches because of the trials involved in it. Simple. That's in the lore by the author himself. But let's continue. While explaining that the developers at CD Projekt Red did ask for advice and extra details about the setting while working on the previous games, these days apparently it's so rare that CDPR contact him to ask about the lore, which makes sense given how much the studio has added to it over the course of the Witcher games, like building Witcher schools based on an offhand reference he threw in before regretting it. Some things are fine, but what they're doing with Ciri fundamentally goes against the series' whole lore. Not once has there been any offhand thrown in that Ciri is a Witcher, or she's become a Witcher. But we have a very prime example of what happens when people decide to go off the lore and do their own thing. As you all know, the season 1 and season 2 of Witcher for Netflix series was pretty successful when Henry Cavill was there. But now we have season 3 and season 4, and as you can see from the screenshot I have taken here, it's from Rotten Tomatoes website, which has the tomato meter at 58% and the popcorn meter at 20%. Not very good ratings. This is why I don't generally think it's a good idea to go off the lore of the books, anything that's your source material. You mainly want to stick to it. Some additions are fine, but when you start fundamentally changing the laws of the world in said lore, it is no longer the source material accuracy, and most of the times it ends up being worse product at the end rather than them sticking towards the established lore already. Because let's be honest, most of the times they just ruin everything instead of making it better. There are instances which is better, but mostly it's worse for the end product rather than an improvement. But that will be all for today's video. I'll see you all next time.